Hmm. Hello, folks, and welcome again to the 8:30 live at 9. And I guess YouTube is going. No, it's just reading 0. Oh, okay, it is going. In the end, it's Sunday at 9, so we'll see who shows up. Also, I'm not so sure I like the 9 o'clock time slot because I think I just like eating dinner afterwards. Oh, Simon. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, man, I hope everybody had a beautiful and happy 4th of July, though. I did go live last night, but really only very briefly because it was right before fireworks, and then I went out and I watched fireworks. It was great. I hope folks saw the full moon. Hello, good friend Simon. And yeah, wow, it's super hot in my room, and I'm wearing this sweater because it's part of the gimmick, but it's unpleasant. I might have to take it off. I don't know. This is not great. In any event, not that much going on. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Not that much going on in the news these days. There is just only like one thing that I want to talk about. Well, actually, two things. The first is that, and they both have to do with like legal minutia. The first happened today, which is that China passed its security laws over Hong Kong, effectively destroying Hong Kong democracy. So they have no trial by jury anymore. And they also have no right to judicial review of laws passed by what is effectively their security committee. But the thing is, if you have no judicial review of a committee that passes laws, then effectively they can pass any law because the laws they pass can't be challenged. So what has ultimately happened is there's no trial by jury. There's no way to control or restrain government decision making. And if you speak out against it, you get life in prison. So the dream of Hong Kong is over. As I mentioned the other day, the United States has granted priority 2 status to Hong Kong residents, which means that they can just come here and apply for refugee status, for asylum status, which is good, but very clearly the folks in Hong Kong are going to have a tough time of it. Second, the last thing I wanted, or second thing I wanted to talk about was about an article that came out fairly recently about supposed plans that Donald Trump has on how to keep control and maintain the presidency, even if he loses the election. And not just loses the popular vote, but loses the electoral college vote as well. And I thought it was important to discuss because it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but actually there is a legal way to do it, and it relies on how well the Democrats do in elections for the House. But I think we should try to understand going into this that the seat that the Democrats picked up last time, there was a blue wave. The odds of doing substantially better, particularly in the way that matters for Donald Trump's plan to hold the White House, is not very likely. So here it works. Essentially, we obviously have this pandemic, right? And we're going to be voting differently this time. There's probably going to be a lot of vote by mail. And even if there's not a lot of vote by mail, there's going to be a lot of chaos involved. Now, aside from this, Donald Trump has been laying the foundation of saying that vote by mail is invalid and eminently hackable, if you will. And he's been laying the foundation saying that China is very happy with the idea of Joe Biden being president and is in fact going to intervene to manipulate the outcome of the election in Biden's favor. So sort of like reverse Russia. This is extremely problematic because what could happen is even if Donald Trump loses the popular vote and the electoral vote in the swing states, if the margin of his loss is not high enough, if it's within a couple of thousand votes as it was last time, he may claim that there was interference. And then those Republican governed states will probably accede to the idea of a federal investigation. Now, it's not the investigation itself which is so dangerous. It's that there is a deadline of December 14th for all votes to effectively be tallied and for electors to be decided. Now, if you're familiar with how the Electoral College works, you don't vote for the president and then state. And there are 2 slates of electors. Well, there are electors for every presidential candidate, but just bear with me because third-party candidates don't really get votes. There are slates of electors for each party, and then the majority vote of each state. If you win a majority of the votes, certainly by congressional district, but that's sort of how it works generally. Now, here's the big concern. By December 14th, the electors need to be decided. This is something that the Supreme Court basically handled in Bush v. Gore. Similar situation, kind of, which is just to say that there is a deadline on how long an investigation or a recount on a presidential election can take. All right. If the investigation, quote investigation, is not completed by December 14th, then those states will probably not have their electoral votes granted to them. What will happen is that the remaining electors will convene and they'll cast their votes for the next president. However, because of the electors of the critical swing states being excluded, nobody will be able to receive the necessary 270 votes to earn a majority of the electors. Now you have another problem. What happens when nobody earns a majority? Well, there is an answer for this, and that is to send the election of the president to the House of Representatives. Now, this might sound fine because the House of Reps is broadly proportional to the voting public. It's a much more representative body than, say, the Senate or even the Electoral College. And we might say that the Democrats currently hold control, so this should be a shoo-in for a Democratic president. But hold your horses. First and foremost, gerrymandering has given the Republicans strongholds which are almost impossible to flip. So know that the current layout, the current terrain of the Congress, of the House, is unlikely to change too substantively in this election. And the way that the House chooses the president is not by majority vote. It is almost the exact same way that electors work, which is that each state gets one vote. Well, yes, each state gets one vote. And that vote is cast by a majority of the decision within the state's congressional delegation. So, for example, New York has a bunch of Democratic representatives and a fair number of Republican representatives. Well, all those representatives will vote together as a New York caucus, and then their decision will be reported out of New York, and New York will get one vote. So the problem being that the majority of states, even though the majority of Congress is Democratic, the majority of state delegations is actually in favor of Republicans by one. Simply take a state like Texas, which is very, very large. There are Democratic congressional members, but the majority of that state is Republican congressional members. When they vote in their presidential caucus, the Republican votes will override the Democratic votes. And this is the case in 26 of the 50 states, which means that if the election is thrown to the House of Representatives, the Republicans will actually get to pick the next president of the United States. And that, I think, it's a relatively complex, it's not even that complex, honestly. It's like a 3-stage plan. And it is completely feasible. So we spoke the other day, somebody asked whether or not I thought Trump would drop out if his poll numbers didn't improve. I was clear that there's no reason to think that Trump would drop out. He doesn't want to be a loser, but there's no point, there's nothing that we can point to that demonstrates that he ever gives up. He never gives up. He moves from one scam or one grift to the next to appear to be successful. And this offers itself as the perfect next step in his plan to hold on to the White House. He won't be a loser if the Republican Congress, well, Democratic Congress, but Republican presidential sorting hat system takes effect. So I wanted to bring that up because this is something that made headlines last week, but I feel like people aren't talking about it enough. I feel like this is very much on the horizon. I feel like it's extremely within Donald Trump's wheelhouse and typical political strategy, and nobody seems to be flipping out about it. Now, if he loses by a wide enough margin, it will be difficult to argue that it was a result of interference or manipulation. But again, if one of these battleground states is close, or two of them are close, this could be a real problem. And by holding up the results of the election past the deadline by which electors must be chosen, there will be mathematically an incapacity of any president to receive a majority, in which case it will go to the House of Representatives and the Republicans will be able to make the decision. That is, unless, of course, the Democrats do even better in Congress this night, or do better in Congress this coming election, and manage to flip entire state delegations from majority Republican to majority Democrat. But that requires a blue wave on a level that we haven't seen. And we've already seen one of the largest reversals in a midterm election ever with the blue wave of 2018. Now, of course, people are, I didn't think it would be possible really, but people are more pissed now because of all the coronavirus stuff. But still, the gerrymandering makes it incredibly difficult to do in these hardcore red areas because Republicans controlled state legislatures in 2010 and did all the redistricting drawing. So that's another thing to just keep on the horizon, which is that all of these state legislatures up for grab this year will have basically determine the course of American governance for another decade, because we're doing the census. And by the way, if you haven't filled out your census form, bad you. Go online, mycensus2020.gov, just fill out your census. It's freaking important. And make sure that your family, if they don't live near you, make sure that they fill it out too. In any event. So you're going to come to my movie night Wednesday at my apartment, asks Dorian. Dorian, I don't feel like the live is the place to make our personal plans, but the answer to your question is probably not, because it's an enclosed space and your apartment's super small, and if you're having more than two people there, it's going to be unsafe given the pandemic restrictions we're all asked to observe. Simon Sachs, your scenario is very interesting, but a state could be picked off, assuming the majority votes Democratic. Okay, so because the majority of states, because 26 of the 50 states are already Republican, then flipping one state doesn't bring us to a Democratic majority, okay? It just puts us at, 25-25 or something like that. I forget what the exact, there was a reason for this, and I feel like I'm doing the math wrong, but whatever. Either the Democrats, the bottom line is, whatever number I said, the article was very clear that flipping one state isn't enough. You need to get two. And for those who are wondering what I'm talking about, we were just going over the plan that was revealed. It was put forward by somebody who claimed, a Republican senator, a senator, I can't remember if that person was a Republican, who claimed that Donald Trump had a plan to stay in the White House, even if he loses the Electoral College vote, as well as the popular vote. And the plan seems to make sense. To go over it very, very briefly with no mechanical detail, it is basically to stall the results of the election, prevent the Electoral College votes of swing states from being counted by claiming that there's manipulation from an outside country, and then kick the decision to the House of Representatives, where Republicans will have control of the vote. Even Democrats have an absolute majority of representation in the House. Republicans in this particular type of vote for the President of the United States have more influence. They have a majority. That's not getting into the mechanics of how that vote goes down. But that being said, so I've covered pretty much everything. I mean, it was a slow weekend. It was a holiday and what have you. And that's the deal. Anywho, if folks don't have any more comments, I'm going to go eat some more food. I did have beans before this, but I'm still kind of hungry. And I'm going to go finish off She-Ra and the Princess of Power, which, by the way, is great. I really can't recommend it highly enough. Same thing with Avatar: The Last Airbender, which, if you haven't seen, as much as I like She-Ra, Avatar: The Last Airbender is still, I think, my number one animated show of all time, easily in the top, I don't know, 3 of all television programs ever. All right, actually, let's do one section of the Magna Carta, and then we can call it a Sunday. But it's always nice to see everybody. Okay, here we go. In future, no official shall place a man on trial upon his own unsupported statement without producing credible witnesses to the truth of it. So, no witch hunts, basically. Like, no official shall place a man on trial upon his own unsupported statement without producing credible witnesses to the truth of it. This is one of two things. And I'm not sure which, but one of them makes more sense than the other. One possibility is that this sentence says that no official shall place somebody on trial without evidence other than the accuser's word. That would be pretty good. But this could also be the Fifth Amendment. No future official shall place a man on trial upon his own unsupported statement. And if his own refers to the person on trial and not to the future official, then this effectively becomes you cannot extract a confession from somebody unless there's a credible witness to the truth of that confession, which is kind of like the Fifth Amendment. I'm not sure to which they're referring, actually. You're going to order sushi. You mean for the movie night? Like, are you saying you'll give me sushi to come to your house? Because that might be compelling. I do love free food. I don't like COVID. Oh, by the way, for those of you who think that COVID is nonsense, I read a thread by somebody today on the internet, but was backed up by other people who comment on it that I did know, talking about the long-term ramifications of catching the coronavirus. Now, some people don't have a serious reaction. Some people have a regular flu-like ailment, and other people have been sick for months at a time with debilitating illness, incapacity to breathe, extreme fatigue, fevers that run on without end for weeks, completely bedridden for months. Now that sounds terrible, and it's not, and it says nothing to the fact that there have been lots of reports of potentially lifelong complications, lifelong ramifications of catching the virus. So as much as I would love to come and eat free sushi, and I like sushi, and as much as I would like to come and watch a movie, to be in a confined space with folks who might spread the virus is just extremely dangerous. Why don't we, here's an idea, why don't we go to the park and put up a projector and watch it outdoors? So I would get free sushi though. So I'm probably not gonna do it. Why can't, there's all these services for remote watch parties. Why don't we do that? Or again, do it outside. Michael Kaplan. I heard a report that there were 20 shootings in NYC today. It wasn't today, it was over July 4th weekend. And yes, there were many shootings. There are 20-something shootings and 2 people died, which is very much higher than last year. However, I think it's very difficult to say that this is because of something to do with defunding the police. Now, the police did promise to call out sick and leave New York undefended, which is a dick move to do because they are butthurt over the fact that people are upset that they willy-nilly infringe on people's civil rights and kill people and expect to suffer no consequence. I think that it's irresponsible of them to simply call out because they're facing a little political pressure. But that being said, two things. One, the billion-dollar budget cut that was announced has not taken effect, nor has the force shrunk in any appreciable way in the last month. A couple of hundred officers claim to have retired, but with a force of, what is it, a couple of thousand, that's some decline, but not that large a decline. The budget cuts haven't taken effect, so it can't be that. And I would like to just say here that the budget cuts that were announced to be budget cuts actually aren't that at all. I went down to Occupy City Hall this weekend. Finally, it was an experience. I could go into it, but let me finish this up first. What I'll say is, when I was talking to folks down there, it turns out that the budget cuts that actually did pass, what you could call budget cuts at least, because a lot of it were just transfers, mind you, right? A lot of it was transfers. It wasn't really cuts or anything. But the cuts that were passed, or the transfers, are not even scheduled to take effect for another year. So basically no changes happened to the police department as of right now. And as a result, nothing of what's going on can be the result of restrictions or hand tying of police work. So there you go. Julian Mallington says, watch Hamilton. Well, Hamilton is a single 2-hour production, and how good could it really be? I'll consider it. I think about watching Hamilton. I've never seen it, and I'm not a hype beast, so I don't care about what's hot or any of that crap. But I guess I should check it out. Dorian Key with Tony. I thought you guys already watched this movie, though. Are you watching it again just to invite me? I thought the point was you watched this movie. Also, answer your damn phone texts, Ben. Okay. Tamara Gayer, what do you think about school reopening plans considering the gravity of the situation? Oh, I was talking to a teacher yesterday, in fact, about school reopening plans. And the reality is that there are not much of plans. Now, there is a desire to open schools again in the fall. So summer school is remote, and the mayor is saying that schools will open for blended learning in the fall. Now, blended learning is basically in-person teaching combined with online teaching. And the goal here is to reduce the number of people within the school building so that it's sparse enough population to social distance, right? So if you imagine that in a regular school situations, regular school environment, you had 30 kids and they all had 3 feet of space, well, you could cut that class in half, have half the kids show up one day, the other half of the kids show up another day, and have the half that did show up to school have 6 feet of personal space, right? So that's blended learning. Now, beyond this, the Department of Education is also meant to provide resources or to allow parents to keep their kids out of school and to provide accommodation for teachers that are in the vulnerable populations so that they can do all of their work remotely. It's a very complex situation, and the Department of Education has not come up with a comprehensive idea of what to do. Instead, it's requested that every school district do the work of figuring out how to safely reopen their schools. It's kind of a cop-out because really, there's pros and cons. You have to break up the problem somehow because every school will be different. They'll have different populations of people, different class sizes, different layouts of their physical space. So schools and districts are going to be integral in figuring out how to proceed. But ultimately, the desire to open the schools in fall doesn't seem to have any concrete strategy for how to implement this. So that is what I have to say about the current situation. There's just not a lot to go on. Michael Kaplan, the notion that police were calling out could have emboldened the crooks. Yes, I mean, there's also a potential cultural situation, or, yeah, I guess cultural, whereby all of the activity in anti-police activism has emboldened people to commit crimes, knowing that the police will be hamstrung. But I don't know if I really believe that. The police are still out there in force. They still have all the resources regularly at their disposal. And, you know, they're using up a lot of resources, honestly, to pin down Occupy City Hall. And Occupy City Hall is really, I felt pretty safe. Like, there's not that much going. People are talking and such, and they are camping out, but you don't need 20 or 30 officers to surround this thing 24/7. Julianne Ballantyne, it's so good. I cried. Leslie Odom Jr. is amazing. I don't know who that is. Also, just because you cried doesn't mean that I'll think it's moving. That's just not how things work for me. But I hear it's a good show. Lily, Ree Hamilton, the album, give you an idea of the caliber of the musical. I have heard songs from Hamilton. The only songs that I care about are the rap battles between Hamilton and Jefferson about policy, because I love it when policy rhymes, you know? But otherwise, you know, it's just a regular musical. And like Lin-Manuel Miranda is good. I mean, I really loved all the songs in Moana, but I did watch In the Heights, and I was just like, this is a less good version of Rent. Now, obviously, Lin-Manuel Miranda's come a long way since In the Heights. It's been many, many years. And again, I really enjoyed all the music of Moana. Well, I enjoy like 3 songs of Moana. Well, like 4 songs in Moana, which is good. That's like most of the songs. But regardless, the point being that like I'll consider giving it a shot. I'm pretty sure I do have Disney Plus, so I should be able to get it. It's on Disney Plus, right? Yeah. So I'll check it out eventually, but certainly not before I finish She-Ra. I've got like 3 episodes left, and it's great. I really wish I had more episodes, honestly. Lily, re-school openings. It seems like the design features that would be good for COVID, like more window for airflow, would create more vulnerabilities for school shooters. Yeah, well, here in New York, we don't have many school shootings. In fact, I don't think we've had any school shootings. And one of the reasons is we have real gun control laws in New York. At least that's what I think. But how do open windows make things easier for school shooters? Because they can come in through the window? I mean, usually they just kind of walk in through the front door and start shooting everybody. Yeah, you want to barricade this. But ultimately, I'm not even sure how valuable the open airflow is for preventing COVID in a room. The thing about the room is, well, okay, so recirculated air is bad. You do want fresh air supply, but really it's about all the air, all the exhalation that gets trapped in the room, and just blowing it around, because the way the walls are, just blowing them against the wall and having it backwash on its way out the window. I just feel like that's probably, I don't know if that's helpful or not. What we need are dividers, and to keep people safely distanced from each other, and for everybody to wear masks all the time. I mean, with masks, you look at the transmission rates, it can be as low as 1.5% or so I've seen. Even if it's 5%, that's much, much better than just having people walking around. With 3, I really want to say 6 feet or more, but schools are packed. With 6 feet of social distancing and a mask, people could be pretty safe. You do have the problem, though, that young children will have a difficult time staying far away from each other. And Rent is a less good version of La Boheme. Disagree. Michael Kaplan, since you have an X-Men shirt on, are you more sympathetic to Magneto's perceived need to go outside the law these days? No. I mean, Magneto kills people pretty regularly. I do think Magneto's an interesting character. I think he's a very principled person, and I definitely appreciate his zeal for what he thinks is right. but I don't agree with his methods at all. Charles Xavier is really, I think, the way to go. And Xavier, to his credit, could literally just mind wipe the entire planet and make everybody not prejudiced against mutants. But he doesn't do it because he wants to convince them, right? Just think about that. He could just hook up to Cerebro, or at any point during the various comics at which his powers have been amplified, or the course of like a few years, he could just go around the world forcing people to not be prejudiced. But he doesn't do it because he wants them to come to their own conclusions. Magneto, on the other hand, wants to force people. Well, he doesn't even want to force people not to be prejudiced anymore. Now he just wants to eliminate non-mutants because he believes in some Darwinian survival of the fittest. So yeah, I'm not for Magneto. I'll also say that some of the X-Men talking points about, like, they have the whole Mutant Registration Act, and it's like, oh, it's supposed to be analogous to, like, the Nazis requiring all the Jews to label themselves as Jews. But I do think it's a little bit different because mutants in the X-Men universe, many of them are effectively carrying around weapons of mass destruction. I mean, we all talk about how we want people to have licenses for guns. Well, imagine somebody is born with an AR-15 on their arm, or a nuclear bomb in their eyes, right? I think the universe, the parallels only go so far. But ultimately, Magneto is a super dangerous person, and I don't approve of his methods because he's ready to use his powers to effectively hurt other people for no other reason than they're different than him. Lily, open windows on different side create drafts which disperses aerosols. Open windows on different side. Yeah, but most schools don't have floor-through classrooms, right? You have a wall of windows and then 3 walls. So the wind comes in, and then it circulates, and then back out. Michael Kaplan. Yeah, Professor X. See him? Professor's not on the shirts. But, yeah. This is the original X-Men, by the way. Before they got all... Anywho, there we go. I've covered all the things I wanted to cover today, and I've answered all the questions. So if that's all, I'm going to go eat some more food, and my neck hurts. So maybe I'll take a warm shower or something and hope my neck feels better. Then you leave the classroom doors open. Yes. And just blow all the aerosols into the hallway. Exactly. That's what we got. Yeah, I'm joking, but ultimately I think it comes down to masks and social distancing as much as possible. And we're going to have this blended learning. I think blended learning, well, it'll be very interesting to see how it goes down, because some teachers will then be taken up by classes, and then you'll need teachers to occupy the folks who are online. Give us hair advice. Be born lucky. Yeah. I don't know. My hair is great. I love it. Look at this. It just sort of stands up on its own. It's amazing stuff. Anywho. Anything else, folks? Anything else I can do for you while I'm here? What do you think? I think I'm going to leave my hair long because I don't want to get a haircut. Because, coronavirus. But it's very hot under here. There's like a lot of it. But I love it. And, isn't this cool? Anywho. Enough with the hair. If there's nothing else, then I'll sign off. I'll give you like another 30 seconds for comments, and then we're outies. No, 30 seconds is a long time, really, when you're not doing anything. What else? Is there anything new? No, I mean that's pretty much it. We've covered everything. So I guess thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Top knot. Yeah. I'm working on it. It's getting there. Right? I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you all tomorrow at 9. Until then.